I'm a certified public accountant, and my goal is really to help people increase their cash flow, slash their debt, and then use a business to gain time freedom. I have Airbnb, I have my coaching and bookkeeping business, and I'm also a corporate girly, working full time and growing my business while I do it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one teeny tiny little favor and make sure to give us a follow because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing guests I got coming on this year. And without further ado, the person I got on today, I actually got to meet at a conference last year in New Orleans. Now, for those of you guys who've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that my New Orleans trip to FinCon last year was by far the most fun conference I've ever been to. Me and Rob had a great time in New Orleans. Got to meet a lot of dope people. And the person I have on today just so happened to be from my area. So we got to connect her twice in person. Once when she was in Stanford, once when I was speaking in Miami. And we've been in touch kind of since. And I was like, I was supposed to invite you on the podcast a long time ago. And I just keep forgetting. Time flies. And I reached out randomly on IG. I was like, yeah, I don't think we ever scheduled anything. I kept saying I was going to send you the link. And I'd be forgetting. So I'm so sorry. But without further being edit this part out. Anyways, without further ado, for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity, the pleasure to get to know you, to get to meet you yet, tell us your quick elevator pitch. Tell us who you are, what you do, and who you help.
Yeah, so for starters, thank you for having me on your podcast and letting me in this space with your audience. My name is Aitza Negrón, Aitza for full. I'm a certified public accountant, and my goal is really to help people increase their cash flow, slash their debt, and then use a business to gain time freedom. I have Airbnb, I have my coaching and bookkeeping business, and I'm also a corporate girly, working full time and growing my business while I do it.
Amazing. So before we get into all the amazing stuff you do, right? Take us back in a time machine.
Okay.
What was little Aitza like growing up? What was your childhood like? Were you always like entrepreneur? Were you always this creative and like energetic person? What was it like growing up, and how did that play into who you are today?
Yeah, I was mischievous. No, but on a serious note, I grew up where my mom worked at a factory in Stamford. I'm from Stamford, Connecticut, so that's what she did. And my dad actually used to work at that factory when I was very young, and then he ended up starting his own business and starting a construction company. And so I grew up where I would see my mom have to wake up very, very early. She couldn't even, before I even got ready for school, right? And my dad, who had that more of a flexibility because he was kind of on his own time, seeing him navigate entrepreneurship and helping him, translate contracts into English, clean up his, he would write things out and then I would have to rewrite them in like cleaner handwriting. So that was really my upbringing. And I think that allowed me to see, two sides. Like my dad really was an out of the box thinker. So he always taught me to think outside of the box or find solutions that were a bit, maybe not like what the book is telling you to do, but like find a solution to a problem, build something with your hands. I remember I used to be like, Dad, I don't want to go to school today. And my dad would be like, oh, okay, you want to go to work with Dad? And he would just take me to work with him instead. And just kept saying like, this is the real, like, this is what you're going to learn. This is the real world. They're not going to teach you this in school. So that was kind of my upbringing.
So how do you remember how young did that start?
I think when I started saying like I don't want to be I was kind of young too. Like when I was little, I would go with him on the weekends. To his job sites, he would work on the weekends as well. But when I got into middle school and high school, that's when I started to say, hey, Dad, like I don't want to go to school today. Can I go with you, right? And he would be like, yeah, like come on, unless I was sick, like actually sick, I'll stay home. But if it was just like he knew I just needed a break from the book learning. He'd like, come with me, come to work with Dad, and you're gonna learn some real stuff. And it just most of the men in my dad's side of the family are all entrepreneurs. Like my uncle owned his own, and he still owns his own mechanic shop. Other uncles are in construction. My brother's an electrician, right? So I feel like I've grown around this like entrepreneurship space my whole life, and went to college, did all the book things, and then here I am, right? I think this is who I really am at my core. Yeah, and I'm grateful to that upbringing.
And so in high school, right before you went to college, right? You were already at that time. You said you've seen your dad, you've seen your uncles, right? You were skipping school, right? Because you didn't feel well or whatever, to go and you go into these job sites and get to see firsthand like a real life entrepreneur, which is it's always different. Seeing like my dad owns a landscaping company, and it's so much. I don't know. It feels a little bit more real. Like, I mean, I have a digital business. I do some teaching in person, but like, that's about it. But like, I feel like these trades and the brick and mortar businesses, I'm not going to say that online businesses aren't real because I'm an online business owner myself. Like everything I do is online, but like I don't, it just feels a little more real, more tangible when you see like a in person, you know, live business owner, whether it's in the construction or the trades or whether it's a coffee shop or something. You know,
Mhm.
it feels different when it's tangible. So
Yeah.
in high school, how was like your thoughts around school? What were your thoughts? I know for me, my first experience, I had a personal finance class
Mhm.
like my sophomore junior year, and that's the first time like I ever learned anything about money. And then I think it was junior year, I took a class on entrepreneurship. It was an elective. I don't really remember much.
Yeah.
It was a we just watched Shark Tank every Friday. That's kind of like my first taste of like entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
and that started kind of plant the seed of like, yo, I did well in school, but
Mhm.
like something about it was like, I don't know. Like I couldn't see myself like going to traditional. I wasn't entrepreneur yet, but like
Yeah.
it was something in that I was planning. So like in high school, like what were your thoughts like towards the end of high school, like and going into college? Was it like, hey, I just got to go to college and do what I got to do and get this degree, or like was it like, hey, you know, I'm not sure really what I want to do, but I also don't want to screw myself over, so I'm kind of going out of obligation. Was it
Yeah.
like, you know, what were your thoughts leading, you know, getting out of high school into college?
Yeah, so full transparency, there was no plan for me to go to college. So I grew up in a space where there wasn't any money for me to go to college. That wasn't ever
Yeah,
something that was discussed or talked about. No one in my household had gone to college before,
yeah,
and so when I was in high school, I like to keep it real, right? So I was really skipping class sometimes and not going to work with my dad, right? And I kind of was just had this outlook on life, like there's nothing really matters, like there's nothing after this, so who
yeah,
cares? And it wasn't until my guidance counselor, Esperanza Diaz, wherever you are in this world, pulled me into her office and was like, "Hey, like, don't you want to go to college?" And it was kind of going into my sophomore year of high school, and I literally laughed at her, and I was like, "College? What are you talking about? There's no money for
yeah,
that, right?" And so she introduced me to the world of scholarships and how it could really be a possibility for me,
yeah,
and that was after I was given a lot of class, and so when that seed was planted, right, I took a 180. Like next thing you know, I was in AP classes, honors classes, like my whole life changed. And I think it was because I now saw this opportunity that I can do something more. And
mm,
thankfully, to getting a scholarship, I was able to go to school on a full scholarship. So that really helped me. And I'm really grateful to that. And I think now I'm going to like the economics, right, about taxes and anyway the benefits of doing donations. But if it wasn't because someone donated to my university, like I would have never been able to get a full ride to school.
yeah,
And then I used all that information to now, like, I went to school for accounting. I did the Academy of Finance actually when I was in high school as well, so that's when I was learning about like the accounting piece.
mm,
um but that was really how it happened, right? It wasn't something that was a possibility. I just thought I was going to graduate, get a job locally, and figure it out. I could always go like help my dad, right?
yeah.
um but it wasn't until that conversation where I was like, okay, going to school could be a possibility for me.
That's dope. And so I have a kind of similar story. So like same thing for me. Like, well, I always had great grades. I never really applied myself though. Like
Mhm.
I was in honors, but like I ain't try hard enough to get into AP. But like I also didn't want to be in CP. I was just like floating around, and I skipped a
Yeah.
ton. I think what's the best secret I learned in high school. I think my senior year I probably skipped maybe 100 classes in English alone. Just English. I missed so many classes. Still graduated with 3.5. So it's like I did what I had to do. I made sure the work got done. But it's
Yeah.
like why waste my time when I could just someone tell me what the work is and I could just do the work and like
Mhm.
still turn it in. It was not like I was cheating on my work. I would do my work. It's just
Mhm.
like if I could get it done sooner without having to be in class, why waste my time in class? And so I used to skip all the time. But similar to you, I was like, you know, we didn't really have money for college, so I was doing everything I could to like get me to that next stage. And I wanted originally to go to Pace because I wanted to go to school of business or whatever, and that was in downtown Manhattan. So it's like you can't get more business than downtown Manhattan. That's like a global economic hub, right? And so it wasn't until financial aid packages came back around, and I'm like, damn, 60,000. Alrighty,
Right.
UConn it is. And so I ended up going into school for I got into the school of business. There's a whole nother backstory behind that. That was a whole nightmare trying to get in there. But I got into the school of business, and then it wasn't until the pandemic that like I kind of became an entrepreneur. I ended up leaving school, so like to kind of go back to you. So you got into college. You're already in this accounting program in high school.
Mm-hmm.
You got in. You got scholarships. You kind of went through the accounting track. Now, fast forward a little bit more in the story. As you were getting ready to finish college,
Mm-hmm.
what were the plans there? Like, what were your plans? Was it to get a traditional job? Was it to help out in the family business? Was it to start your own practice? Like, where do you go from there?
Yeah, I think, when the whole thing with the scholarships, I think that kind of planted a seed. I mentioned the seed got planted in me that there's opportunity, but it
Mm,
also made me realize how many other people and families don't know about the FAFSA, don't know about scholarships, have never had this
yeah.
conversation. So, like, and it'll connect, I'm assuming later based on the questioning.
Yeah.
But at that moment, I had said, like, oh, one day I'm going to start something like some type of mentorship where like people give back and teach younger kids about scholarships and help families who are working hard so that their kids feel like someone's there cheering them on and whatever it is that they're doing. So when I went to towards the end of my schooling, I really wanted to go into Big Four, like accounting, right? That's kind of what they say. Like when you
Yeah.
graduate accounting, you want to be one of the top four firms,
PwC, Deloitte, all
PwC,
that. Yeah.
EY, right? And that wasn't my story. I actually got an internship at a investment bank, and so I had secured that job until after college. And I didn't get at the time. I didn't get any opportunities for the Big Four, which I was like, okay, it's fine. I still got a good job in finance, and so that was kind of my thought process. But like, I think deep down, I always had this vision of being my own boss, right? And my dad was always kind of like, oh, like you want to have what's yours, like you want to own, like he was very big on like you want to own your time, you want to own these things. But I started to fall into that, I guess that cycle, that trap of like,
The
no,
golden handcuffs,
the golden handcuffs, right? Get the corporate job,
the
do this, do
stability, the
that,
paycheck, the 401k,
right?
everything.
Like get the
The,
security, and obviously, like for my family, it's like, yeah, like you first to go to college, like get the good job. And then I got that first job at the investment bank, and I was the youngest person there, and it was like kind of miserable. I did learn a lot. It was great, and my team was great, but I started realizing, this is not what I want to do forever. And so I decided, like, I want to still work at the Big Four. Like, I want this name under my belt. I want to be able to do it. And I actually went back to my school as an alumni on career day to go
Mhm.
like meet these firms. Got an interview. Like, I remember I called out of work sick. Like, drove to the interview in the rain, parked in the grass. There was no parking, illegally parked. I was like, whatever. I'm gonna do what I need to do. And it was funny because the interviewer that day was like, oh, like, well, where'd you park then? I was like, oh, I just parked on the grass. Like, I just made a parking spot because I was already running late because it was raining and the traffic.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, well, what if you get a ticket? I was like, what if I get a job? And it
Hey,
worked.
there
And
you go.
I got that job. And my whole family, they kind of panicked, right? Because I was going to take a big pay cut. And they're like, oh, but you have this secure job. You have this thing. And I was just like, it's all right. I took a double-digit pay cut. And now I'm in a better position than if I would have just stayed at that investment bank, with 3% raises that they just give you at corporate jobs.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like kind of my path post college.
And so remind me again, because my memory sucks. So
Yeah,
I always forget. You're Puerto Rican, right?
yeah, I'm Puerto Rican.
And
That's
you're
it.
full. Okay,
I'm Puerto Rican.
good. Okay. So I was right. There you go. My memory isn't that bad. I know. I mean, we're from the Caribbean. I'm Dominican, but like, it's kind of the same thing. Our cultures fight all the time. It's kind of all the same. But what was it like? Because I know for me, like when I dropped out of college, right? So I never finished. But
Mm-hmm.
like the way like our cultures are so quick to tell the family about our business, right? The moment I dropped out, I had everybody and their mother, every auntie out to come out the woodwork, like John, like like you should really finish like your 4 year degree. Like, yeah, ¿qué estás haciendo? Está loco. Like, telling me about what I should do with my life. And so your situation is different. You finished, but like once you took that double digit pay cut, almost kind of similar. You made a big decision
Yeah.
that in the short term looked as if you were making a wrong decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so like what was it like navigating your way through that? Because I know there's a lot of Hispanics and not a lot of people cultures, but like especially Latinos, right? It's like we have like people in our family that have such strong opinions and for whatever reason feel the need to share them with us
Mm-hmm.
all the time. They, they,
All
they
the
feel
time.
they feel the need to let us know, and it can almost cause a little bit of doubt. Sometimes it can cause a little bit of
Mhm.
like, yeah, am I doing the wrong thing? And like you start second guessing yourself. So like, what was it like navigating through that decision making process? And as I said, taking that double digit pay cut.
Yeah, so that was kind of hard because, like you said, Latinos, they be sharing all your business. I'm like, dang. So then it was, it's kind of like, oh, he called my other sisters, habla con tu hermana. I don't know, she's about to make it, this is going to be a mistake, so I had to, it was hard, right? And I think
Yeah.
even when you go into entrepreneurship too, like it's hard when you don't have people that have that same vision, but you have to realize like God gave you the vision, not everybody else. So sometimes you have to go through these like moments of doubt. But for me, I just was thinking, okay, like, but if I get this job at a big four and have that on my resume, like it's going to open a lot more doors. I wanted to be in the audit side I was in the audit side. So I was like, it's going to allow me to travel. Like these are things that I wanted to do. And I just still it took me a little bit, but then I did it. And then I did it in a really like bold way. And I think now having that experience, like I use that, like it's like part of my testimony. Like when I'm afraid to do something scary, I'm like, girl, remember when you were real bold? Because like I thought it through, and what I did was I needed to get credits to get the 150, right? So even though I got the offer to work at a big four, I still needed 150 credits, or the credits so I could sit for the CPA exam, right? So that I could start the job. So I had to go to actually community college. Well, I decided to take the courses at the community college because it was cheaper, which meant that I needed to go to a part-time work schedule. So when I gave my 2 weeks notice, right, I walked in the room like, hey, this is my 2 weeks. However, since I'm the only person that understands how to do my job, I'm willing to stay on as a contractor part-time to train my replacement. And if not, then this is my 2 weeks notice. Real bold, right? They're looking at me like, girl, how you going to quit and try to negotiate at the same time? So my parents were just like, this girl. I've driven them mad my whole life. So it was just like an additional driving them mad even as an adult. And the day before my like last day, they came back and they took me up on my offer, right? So now I'm on a part-time schedule, making more money. Actually, I'm making not more, but like almost similar to if I would have stayed 40 hours because the contractors get paid more money. Went to school to get my credits. When my 3-month contract ended, now I'm eligible for unemployment because I didn't quit my job. I was a contractor. So the whole summer before I started my job, I was collecting unemployment.
That's
I wasn't working.
Smart. Yeah.
And it was just like how it works. So like in these moments, I'm like, you know what? You got to walk with boldness, right? In the scary thing.
Walk in faith.
Walk in faith. And, once my parents started to see I was like being able to travel, do all the things. And even though I knew like I'm leaving I don't want to say easy job, but a more structured job to go into chaos. Because you hear all the stories, like auditors working all these crazy hours and do all the things. So my parents, it was like double crazy. Like you're going to take a pay cut and you're going to work more, right? But it allowed me to grow a lot. Like I led a lot of DEI initiatives there. I got to travel. I got to meet with high-level executives. So I think, like you said, I had to realize like the money right now isn't everything. Like I want to grow, I want to learn. And once you identify that what's going to get you to where you want to be isn't a dollar sign, that's going to allow you to make bigger moves.
Yeah. So you were moving like an entrepreneur before you ever actually had the title in the LLC, right? So you got the job, right? You started working in there, something that you were chased, you pursued, you got it. From there, you mentioned earlier also that you knew that, deep inside you always kind of want to do your own thing.
Yeah.
Right. How did that start to build and grow while you were at this one of these big fours? Like, how did that start to stir up? How did that start to come together? Where did the vision? I know when we talked last time in Miami, you were telling me how like, and I don't know if that was the next step, but like you were telling me how, God gave you this, this vision, and he gave you the name for one of your programs. I don't know if that's later on in the story or that was then, but take us back. So you got the job, right? And you start working at this big four. From there, where does your journey start to go now?
Yeah. So as I'm working through the big four and learning, I'll be really like, again, I'm all about transparency. There were actually not so good things that were happening at work, like people talking to you crazy, like navigating this corporate balance where it's like, hey, and I spoke on a panel. I was a keynote speaker at a national event for the firm, and I said this on stage too. So they were like, "What is one thing that you learned, that was hard as a minority at work?" And I was like, "Hey, like helping people understand I'm gonna be late sometimes, right? Because my parents need help before I go to work, so I have, like kind of balancing that piece of it." And I think as I started to navigate corporate politics, and certain things that would happen, I remember my dad like, "We don't talk to you like that. So why are they talking to you like that?"
Yeah, corporate passive aggressiveness the corporate entitlement is crazy.
It's crazy work. Like, so I was like,
and it's so annoying because like I know you weren't like that back in high school. Like you probably got bullied or probably had it rough, and now you got this senior position. You're abusing it. I see
Right.
right through it all. It's you're just projecting because you never would talk to anyone like that outside of that corporate wall. And I do, yeah, I know,
Yeah, so
I
it's
know.
just like I'm like, y'all talking crazy. You know, so it's like navigating that and realizing like sometimes there's a lack of respect for time.
Mm,
I would see like higher level executives who, for example, had vacations planned with their family, but something happened and the job was, it was like a soft expectation, like you're going to change your vacation. I was like, I don't want to work like that. And I think, actually, before I joined Big Four, when I was at the investment bank, my grandfather had passed away. My boss was on vacation, and so I was like the second person who knew what we did from our team. And
yeah,
so our mutual boss was kind of like making it very uncomfortable that I'm trying to take days off to go to my grandfather's funeral, right?
yeah,
And I remember I called my boss on vacation. He was in Jamaica, and I told him what was going on, and he's like, okay, the HR policy is one across the board. So you take your bereavement days and they will figure it out.
yeah,
And it was just like, I don't want to be subjected to like explaining myself to people. Like I want to be able to lead the way I want to lead. And I think it was really that, like that piece of it. And then
yeah,
talking to my dad, like my dad was very big on, if you want something, you have to go for it. Don't say no to yourself. Ask the question,
yeah,
but do it smart. Like, you know,
yeah,
and so I think that's what kind of started moving me to I want to build something else. And I just always had it in me. I just didn't recognize it, right? So, for example, I started leading a lot of D&I groups at my job, right? For them,
yeah,
I started doing all this extra stuff for my job. But now I look back and I'm like, oh, it was really for me because deep down I wanted more. Like I
yeah,
wanted to create certain spaces. I wanted to make people feel included and empowered. Like these are the things I just naturally wanted to do. But I think God used all those experiences to like, so when I decided to do it, now I'm ready. I have something to reference back to.
yeah. No, 100%. You're an entrepreneur training to get take the training wheels off almost in a way and
Yeah.
get into your own thing. So all right, so you were doing all the initiatives, you were involving yourself and going above and beyond, right,
Hmm.
and leading a lot of these things. And after your grandpa passing, you started like to really start building like, hey, this is like, I mean, I
Yeah.
knew I was about to do my own thing, but now it became more front and center. Like, yeah, I'm not living like this forever. I got to
Right.
figure something out, right? So, um, I know now a lot of the things you do are online. Did it start online? Like, what was like your first step to like when all right, the business actually started like becoming something that was like like the idea became more tangible. Like, all right, I'm
Yeah.
starting it. Here's what it's called. Here's what I'm doing. Like, was it or did it kind of just come together piece by piece? And after let's say a couple months or a year or however long,
Yeah.
it came together.
Yeah. So I think it was after the pandemic. I had already like felt called to move to Miami, so I ended up just moving to Miami by myself with my cat, me and my cat. So moved to Miami. Still was at the Big Four, but I went from audit to consulting. So I started doing like assessing process flows, automation opportunities, acquisitions, etc. And I was here. I moved in September 2019 to Miami, and actually, almost exactly a year later, I got laid off, right? And so even though like I was a 5-star performer at work, like all the things, I got laid off. And that was a reminder to me, and I remember when I was in college, my mom's company closed. So they all got
Yeah,
severance. And so it was just confirmation like, you're just a number at your job.
yeah,
One income stream is way too close to none, and you will just get replaced. Right. So, like, what are you building? And at that time, like, I had struggled with debt while I was, at my early years in my career because I was making money that I never had seen
never.
before and
Mm-hmm.
never learned how to manage before. So, I had already started coming out of that, making a financial plan for myself, building the good things. So, when I got laid off, I actually didn't have to work for 6 months in a time where people were like freaking out, right? Like,
Yeah,
the economy was going crazy. And so it was at that point when I started doing free resume reviews for other people that were laid off. And because when you get laid off, sometimes your company like provides like different services. So one of the services was a company that helps you like with your resume and all the things. So because I did so well in it, the lady from that company started sending me people like, hey, would you want to like talk to people, like help them with their resumes? I feel like you'd be a great, your energy. And I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, for sure. So she started sending me people. I would like review their resumes and just like kind of speak to them. And when the first one they would go on cameras with me, some of them were older than me. They would be like
yeah,
shocked, right? Because they're like, who's this young girl? But as I started doing these free resume reviews, I realized some of these people, they had worked for factories, like mind just like a national, right, all over the country, factories their entire lives, right, 30 years more, got laid off. They didn't even know about Microsoft Office, Microsoft, like the suite or anything, and now they have to find a job. When I was like, they should be close to retirement. They should be thinking about, you know what, I can retire, I can take it easy. But instead, it's like, no, I need this job. I
Yeah.
need to get a job. And at that moment, it like hit me like, financial literacy is still needed. And it brought me back to that vision I had when I was in high school
Yeah.
of I want to create something where people can learn about the resources and the tools around them. So it actually started with free resume reviews. That kind of triggered this. And then, so it was fall 2020 ish. And that's when I kind of decided like, I want to start something different. So focused on paying off my car. I started doing Turo. I was already doing Airbnb, but obviously pandemic, right? No one's really staring at Airbnbs. And the Airbnbs, I was using it to pretty much fund my parents' retirement, like set money aside for them.
Yeah.
And then January 2022, I officially like registered my business, but I started on my birthday, which full circle moment. But I started like
Yeah.
actually like on my birthday, 2021. I was like, I'm gonna start this business. I started doing some back office stuff, like what did I think I needed, like website, all the things, and just started posting about teaching people financial literacy, really focusing on people that felt like they were living paycheck to paycheck, because I wanted them to realize that that feeling is not necessarily a reality. It's more in control than we think.
Yeah.
And throughout that time, that's how my business kind of started, and now it's flourished into something different as I started helping people see that your job is great. Leverage your job if you feel a desire to start a business, but also like it could be golden handcuffs and it could put a cap on you, right? Like
Yeah.
the raises are usually 3 to 5%, right? It could be more, but you have a cap on your life and income is really limitless. So that's kind of just how I started.
Yeah. You mentioned a few good points that
Yeah.
I don't know whether you wanted to or not, but like I kind of picked up, which is one of the big ones. Is like you got to go after what you want, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times people, for one reason or another, not saying any reason's bad or good, but for one reason or another, stop themselves because of the uncertainty of
Mm-hmm.
like what this could look like. And so you were there, you got laid off, and like opportunity presented itself. And instead of being like, nah, like screw those people, I got laid off. Why on earth would I start helping other people? It was like, no, there's an opportunity here. And then I think the big second thing is finding gaps where you can help people. I think that's one of the skills that I think as an entrepreneur, you got to get really good at is like
Mm-hmm.
being able to see gaps faster than anyone else. Because the
Yeah.
person usually who solves the solution, provides the solution first,
Mm-hmm.
usually gets the majority of all the rewards, right? If someone does it first, it doesn't mean they're better, doesn't mean they're smarter or harder, work harder. They just have early adopters advantage, right? The
Yeah.
people who get there first usually have a big edge of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of times, like in entrepreneurship, a lot of people just move so slow, right? And then when there is an opportunity, it's like they drag their feet, and it's like, no, you got to get there. Doesn't matter if it's pretty, you just got to get there, because you get there first, then that opens up. For me too, with this whole AI stuff, I think I taught my ChatGPT class like a month and a half after ChatGPT came out.
Wow.
I don't come from AI. I don't know nothing about that, like programming, Python, computer development. No, I just taught the class first.
Yeah.
It started getting a little bit of motion, and that turned into something now a year and a half later, almost like 2 years later, that now that's my business, right? And that's what a lot of people around here know me from, is the AI stuff. And just like I just happened to be first to it. And
Yeah.
kudos to you for seeing, doing the resumes when the time where you could just say, screw everyone, I just got laid off. Like, why would I, help out in any capacity? You
Yeah.
just took that opportunity. And then from there, kudos to you to seeing that there was something missing that you could fill, and then finding a solution to fill it. And so ended up starting your business on your birthday, you said, um, which was also just yesterday from the time of recording. So happy belated and happy business anniversary. Right, that
Yes.
makes 3 years, right? 3 years in business
Yeah. Of
officially.
anniversary. Yeah.
Happy 3 years. And so take us back a little bit again. So when you started the business around that time, you said you started talking about personal finance, right? Financial literacy,
Mm-hmm.
people who were living paycheck to paycheck and didn't
Yeah.
really know what to do with their finances. What was it like getting your first clients? What was it like getting that business off the ground? You said you started posting stuff on social
Yeah.
media. Like, take us back to like what that was like.
Yeah. So honestly, I've actually, before I registered my business and posted, I invested $2,000 in a coaching program to teach me how to show up on social media, right? Because now I'm doing these video podcasts and I go do these live streams, but they freaked me out at the beginning. I was like, oh my gosh, what if someone I used to work with sees me post on social media? What if I say the wrong thing? There was already established money coaches who were charging like $50 to work with them, right? And I'm like, well, I can't charge $50, but so there's a lot of like imposter syndrome that was happening. But I went ahead, I started my business. I took that course, and it talks about how to be more efficient with creating content, how going live is very important. So I started going live. Started in January. I didn't get my first client until July, right? So there was like 6 months of no activity, right? I had my friends were following my business page. Yeah, which is strategies and tea, by the way, because I wanted to change the narrative around spilling the tea, right? Usually spilling the tea is like chisme and gossip, and I was like, why can't we spill the tea on like things that will help us be better, like
Yeah,
as a
drop some game for real.
right? So, I remember before I got my client, which was a paid in full client. My first client was actually paid in full,
Congrats.
and 4 figures. And 2 days before, I called my friend crying. And I was like, I don't even know why I started this business. Like, no one wants to work with me. No one cares about their money. Like, this is just, maybe this is dumb. Maybe I should stop. And she's like, no, like, you're still new. Just keep posting. And 2 days later, boom, first client. And I think it made me realize that sometimes like we're so focused on like what's like right in front of our face, but it's like what's going on behind the scenes you don't even know about, right? Like, how's God working? You don't even know what He's doing.
Yeah.
But we're already like creating these doubts. So that was a big deal for me. And when I got that first client, right, I had an idea of what I wanted to go through, and it was pretty much my story of navigating money. But I didn't have like recorded videos. I didn't have all these things. I just had a notebook that's like, okay, the first week I want to talk about this and this. Like, these are how I want the weeks to go. I kind of wrote them down, and I kind of went with it. Of course, I had my ideas on what we would cover and like the goal was. It wasn't as clear as I feel like it is now, but I just started. And I think that's the biggest thing is sometimes we want to wait for perfection, right? I told you I started on my birthday. I didn't register my business until January. And that's time, like, I need a website. I need all these things. I didn't really need a website because nobody knew what I was selling. I needed to show up.
Yeah.
Right. So I could have saved money there and just focused on showing up and then built these things later. And so I think that's something that I quickly learned as I started to like move into my business and getting that first client. And then also, what did I learn? Like, I learned a lot from my first client, things that I could do better, things that I needed to put into an agreement. Like, it also taught me, and I think like everything that happens, it teaches you. And there's a saying that a lot of entrepreneurs say, like, fail fast. And now I see like the reality in that. Like, yeah, fail fast. Like, try all the things, fail fast, because then you're figuring out what's you figured out what's not working is going to help you figure out what's going to work.
Yeah, 100%. I either fail fast, fail often,
Yeah.
fail forward.
Yep.
Right. All the above, right? I was just as crazy. So I mentor students at UConn. Quick little backstory. In the pandemic, someone from the entrepreneurship department reached out on LinkedIn. I didn't use LinkedIn like that. I just have my schedule to post content on there. And they're like, hey, we're looking for alumni to mentor. I was like, great, I'm interested. Technically, I didn't graduate, so I'm not sure if I'm technically considered an alum or not. But I didn't graduate, and they're like, "Oh, no worries." And so, past like 3 semesters, I've been mentoring students. It's like it'll be like 2 calls a semester with a kid though. But like this semester has been the best semester so far. I got 3 students I'm mentoring, and so it's like one of them. I just on the phone with him before this podcast, and I was pretty much telling him the same thing almost in a way. You know the analogy of with the clay pots.
No.
It's pretty much like how there's 2 teams and they were both given a task to create the best clay pot or something like that. Team A, they did all the research up front, read the books, watched the videos on like how to make the perfect clay pot, and then at the end they made a really really solid clay pot. But they only made one. Just spent all the time researching up front and then just made a really good clay pot. Team B went in a totally different route. They said screw the research, screw the reading. They just started making clay pots from the jump. Boom, messing up, reiterating. And when the time was up and they both presented their final versions of the clay pot, whatever, Team B did way better than Team A. And the reason why is because while Team A was trying to make the perfect clay pot on the first try, Team B just wanted to continually improve. And so they made a bunch of clay pots, and after each one, they got to reiterate. They got to do a little bit different. They got to improve over and over, and over a long enough time. By the time the project was over, the time was up. Team B ended up doing way better because
Mm-hmm.
they had so many reiterations. And so I was telling him pretty much using that example was like he wants to do music, and so he told me he wanted to drop a song on 11/11. Well,
Mm-hmm.
it's today we're recording. It's 11/14. Song hasn't dropped. What's going on? So he's like, yeah, like I've been showing it to a couple of like trusted friends of mine, producer friends of mine, and they're like, I just really want to make it good, and you just really want to make it perfect and whatever. And I just kind of been stuck because like I want the song. Like I've been doing music for a while, and I have this image that I want to uphold. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
want people to think that my music is trash, especially because I've been doing it for so long. All these are kind of like limiting beliefs, and so I kind of use that analogy with him today. It's pretty much getting him across like, hey, your songs would be better if you made more songs and more people gave you feedback about your songs.
That's
Like
true.
instead of you going to a couple people, I think it's hard too at times as an entrepreneur because you get people that are close to us like you're doing so great. Man, you didn't know what's going on behind our scene. Our business may be like blowing up and we
Yeah.
going through a hard time, maybe a dry season. But like people be like, oh no, you're young, you're hungry, great job. And so like you'll feel like almost a sense of accomplishment, and yet you're not hitting your goals. But
Mhm.
because you hear these people tell you doing good, you feel as if you already did. And then
Right.
sometimes you take your foot off the gas a little bit. And it's
Yep.
just like, I was trying to get the point across to him, like, hey, like, if you just drop more music, you would get better. And your songs would be more close to perfect way faster than if you just keep on procrastinating and dragging your feet on
Yeah.
dropping this one song. And he was like, oh, that's the point. Sorry, he was telling me how he was setting up his profile on Spotify and like how his profile wasn't finished setting up. And I was like, bro, F the profile. I didn't say this like this, but I'm like, yo, F the
Yeah.
profile, bro. No one's checking out your profile. They're checking out your music.
Yeah.
But like, it could be very easy to
I've
get
never
caught
read
up.
somebody's profile. So fine.
Yo, exactly. And so it's like, we get caught up doing these little things that make us feel like we're being productive and it's
Mm-hmm.
checking stuff off the to-do list, but it's
Yeah.
like it's not the one thing that we need to do. And so all right, so reel us back in a little bit. So you got that first client, you said it went well, you got to learn from it, you made your first four figures off the first client, paid in full. So kudos to you on doing that, because especially it could be very easy to like, oh, I can do a payment plan for you, and try to like undercut your own self, even
Yeah.
though the client is willing to, drop a bag on whatever you charge.
Yeah.
It can be very easy to do that. So after that first client, you said it took you about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
From there, did you kind of hit like your stride a little bit, or was it like a dry season in between? What was that like after that first client?
Yeah. So actually, I did that last. So the second half of the first year of my business, I actually did
Yeah,
really well. I was surprised. I made a little over 10 grand
that's what's up.
from July through December. And it was after the first client, right? I learned from that client, I actually raised my prices, right? Because my price was, everyone's like, oh, it's a little too low for a 3 month program. Raised my prices a little bit, started getting more people. Now, because my price was higher, I was getting more clients that were like super focused on this goal that they had, right? And I think it's because sometimes there's like no pain, no gain.
People
So
pay
people,
attention.
right, people they had to put their skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
And so I started getting more clients. I was doing everything private one on one, and then I decided to move later in 2022, end of 2022. I moved more into like a group format. Um, but it was actually going well, and every time I was always asking for feedback, right? So as you said, right, it's one thing for me to talk to my friends about, hey, I'm thinking about teaching people like these things, but guess what? A lot of my friends were in the finance and accounting industry because I was in the finance and accounting industry. So to them, it makes sense, right? I learned through my clients, like, okay, this I need to explain a little bit more. This might be too advanced for where they're at, because the people that were coming to work with me were feeling scared. They were afraid of money, right? They were afraid. They felt that they were dumb when it came to money. They had all these things, and I realized that as sometimes when we're the expert, we don't think about like, but who was I before I became the expert? And that's at the level I need to teach it, because that's what they're going to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I think getting that feedback allowed me to tweak my program as every single client went through the program, and like asking for that consistent feedback.
Yeah.
And so I started to modify kind of what I was teaching, how I was teaching it. When I started, I tried the group program, and I got only 2 people in my group program. I was like, it's lit. Y'all both about to meet each other. I started to see the benefits of that because I was investing in myself as well and
Yeah.
signing up for group courses so that I can continue to learn how to run my business.
Yeah.
And I saw so much value in that group format because some people are going to ask a question that maybe I didn't even think about at the time. So I started to see my two clients go through the program together, and really bounce off each other. I started building that community because one thing I found is a lot of people feel isolated about money. They don't want to necessarily talk about their money concerns and their challenges around the people that see them every day.
Yeah.
But creating a space where they can freely talk about it and they know the other person in the room is also going through it with them.
Yeah.
There was a lot of value there. But
100%.
in 2023, that's when I kind of I stopped hitting the gas, right? I was like, oh, I need to focus on my systems. I need to build an online community space, and I stopped selling, right? Which I stopped going live so frequently. Then I started getting confused, like, who am I talking to, like, in my audience? And that happens, like, for those of you watching, it's like, I want to start a business. You're gonna get these moments where you're like, you get confused, or these doubts start popping back in, but you have to catch them and correct them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing that started to confuse me a bit was that actually, as of 4 months ago, 90% of my clients that I coached on personal finance all launched a business. And that wasn't even part of my program. I was like, there's something here. What is going on? And it was because as they got to know me through the 90 days we worked together, and as they started to remove their fear of money, seeing that it's really a tool, that they're really in control of it. And one of the things that I always focus on is limitless income, right? Because I teach people how to budget, right? How to budget, manage their money. But whenever people think about budgeting, they only think about all the things they got to give up. Well, I can't go out to eat. I can't buy my coffee. I can't do this. And I'm like, no, you can do that. I teach them about, like, the money gap is what I call it. So I teach them, no, you can do all those things. You got to make more money. Your job is capping you here. Are you going to go find a new job, right? Because if you go find a new job, usually raises are like 20 to 30% when you move to a different company, or you can start something of your own. And so as they got to know me through those 90 days and my story, now when I've asked them for feedback, like, okay, so what was it that got you to start the business? They're like, well, it's because you, like, let us, like, all of them on consistently was like, I allowed them to see the opportunity that they can start something and just give it a try. They just have to manage their time better. They have to do these things better. So now, even with my program now, like, I started a phase 2 so I can support them in that transition, or even current business owners who are realizing, like, they're not making a profit, how they can get there. So you mentioned earlier about how God gave me the name for my program.
Yeah.
My program used to be called Ember, right? And I felt like, a small fire that could be relit, blah, 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 which I also felt like that came to me. And so then one day I was like, okay, how can I make my program name much more clear so people can see what I'm doing? I always compare money to water. And I'm driving, I see a plumbing truck with, like, the faucet flowing down.
Yeah.
And it was like, boom, money flows, right? Like, I'm helping people how to create money flows in their life, how to see that money can flow into their life. They just have to unlock the block. Bars. Unlock the block that they have. And so, right. So create money flows. And then after FinCon this year, I was praying to have more clarity as I started figuring out, like, what I was, I guess, unintentionally coaching people that was getting them to see the opportunity. And I started connecting with my past clients. And so now I'm like, I help people get from paycheck to purpose, right? They realize they don't have to be on the paycheck focus. They could focus on what's their purpose in life. I teach you about Future Them. Like, how are you saving? How are you building, sustainable things in your money life so that you can gain time freedom? And then I teach people how to go from purpose to profit, right? Like, you found your purpose. Now you secretly feel called to start something. Where do you start? And how do you start making money from that? By creating money systems in the business side. So that's kind of like the flow.
Yeah, no, it's amazing because I got to see, not completely behind the scenes, but, like, I got to talk to you a little bit about, when we last met up and stuff, and caught up a couple of days ago about everything you have coming on. But, like, I think one thing that you do really well is, like, you come up with good names, like, and, like, the meaning behind names. I feel like that's a skill. That, like, a lot of people just pick names to pick names. I feel like having a backstory behind your name just makes everything so much better. So, like, one of the backstory behind my podcast, right, Walk to Well, I might have told you a while ago, but the Plato quote.
Yes.
Yeah, the duty of the enlightened is to enlighten the unenlightened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for the 99% of us who are overnight sensations, it's a long walk to wealth, and some may walk quicker than others, but what good is finishing sprinting to the finish line if you pass out when you cross it, right?
Right.
That was like the message behind like the whole like walk to wealth thing. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people see it and it's like, yo, that's such a great name. It's like, yeah, I got some bars too, and I feel like it hits home a lot better, especially when there's meaning behind what we
Yeah.
do. And so I mean, now in the stage of business, um, yeah, just fill us in. Like, where can we connect with you? Where can we find you? What are you currently working on? As I said, you can help us go from paycheck to purpose, and from purpose to profit. Some
Yes.
people need more purpose. Some people need more profit. Some people need both. So, where can
Yeah.
we find you? Where can we connect with you? Where's the next, group coaching session or next cohort, whatever you have going on? Fill us in. We need to hear it.
Yeah, so it's strategies and TEA on all platforms. The TEA stands for tenacity, education, and accountability, which I think are the three things we all need, right? As we're navigating our path. I am currently in launch mode for my Money Flows Academy, which includes phase 1 and 2, right? So if you're someone who's like, I just want to get my money in order right now. I have some debt. I want to figure that out. Then, your path would be that paycheck to purpose path, right? And I'm super excited for my inaugural launch of phase 2 as I start supporting people on that second, right? They're ready to go from purpose to profit. And for that one, I'm only going to take 3 people. I'm actually going back to private one-on-one for that program. Phase 1, if there is an option for private, I am moving in that group space. I think there's power in community. But for those people that are ready to launch that business, or current business owners that realize they haven't set up the foundation that they need to build a profit, I am taking only 3 people for that. But super excited for that launch. I also do bookkeeping work, as actually over the past 2 years that has come into my realm. And as I support business owners with those monies in the bookkeeping world, a lot of them realize they need coaching, right? That
Mm-hmm.
they're struggling because the way that they have a block in the way they see money, and it impacts them in how they sell, it impacts them in how they talk to clients. So I'm supporting people in that space as well. So I think it's very interesting to see where my business is now,
Yeah.
and the clarity that I've gained like over these 3 years by failing forward, right? And seeing what are the things that I've done and how can I now help people, do those same things so that they can be better than I was in that moment, right? You talk about like walking to wealth. It's also about lifting as we climb, right? So like what have
Mm-hmm.
you learned that you can now pass on
Mm-hmm.
to somebody else? And even if that means they're gonna get somewhere farther and faster before you, like who cares? Like
Yeah.
you had to go through your journey because now that journey is going to be designed to help somebody go through their journey, and then we continue to like move the needle that way as a community.
100%. I feel like people sleep on mentors. Like the only reason
Mm-hmm.
that you're able to go further faster is because the people cut the path in front of you. So you don't have to go through all that BS that
Right.
they did. Like they already cut it off. So you just gotta just pretty much run, right?
Yeah.
And so but yeah. So now it's time for our famous 5 questions. Same 5 questions we ask every single guest that hops on. Question number 1: what is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
The most impactful lesson I've learned in life is that sometimes we actually it's fairly recent that I kind of learned this lesson, but it kind of connects everything. Is that sometimes when we don't see our vision, challenges really suck. But when we're working towards something, we're gonna go through challenges, and it doesn't sting as much because you're like, you know what, this sucks, but it's getting me closer to my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we forget about what our vision is, and we're so focused on everybody around us and what their visions are for our life or for themselves, and we let that kind of blur in our brain. And so it's just like taking that step back to like clear out the noise and say, okay, but what am I truly feeling to do? And like just take that step, just do it. Like, and it's easier said than done, but
Yeah.
do it scared.
Yeah. Do it
Do it
scared.
scared. So I guess like a few lessons there, but
Yeah. What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
say that again.
Admirable.
I think the most admirable trait someone can have is empathy and understanding. Um, I think if you start from there, like all the other traits like trust and integrity, like it'll fall in. So I would say like having empathy.
If you had to change someone's life but only had one book to recommend, which would it be?
The Bible.
Amen. Perfect answer. What is the legacy that you're working on leaving behind?
So the legacy I'm working on leaving behind is communities like where they know that they can hold on, I have to think about how I want to say this. So, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what is the legacy that you're working on leaving behind?
So, legacy I'm working on leaving behind is a place where financial literacy is a known thing that gets encouraged in society to teach people. And really a place where we can move as a community instead of focusing on being so siloed and kind of doing things secretly and by ourselves, but
Hmm.
realizing that if we just share it with people, like we can create a real impact, like as a community together. So that's kind of the legacy I want to leave behind.
And for anyone that wants to embark on their walk to wealth today, what is the first step you recommend they take?
The first step, if you want to start walking to wealth, is make the decision
Mm.
and then actually commit to it. Don't worry about motivation. Don't worry about being inspired because those things, they come and go. But a commitment that you're going to show up and just take it one day at a time, that's what's going to get you farther. Like, don't think about 3 months from now. If I mean, you could create the long term goal, work your way backwards on what the math is like, but then just show up every day and say, okay, tomorrow's a day, I'm going to show up every day. So if we start doing that, it removes some of the burden because if you miss a day, it's not like, well, now my whole future is ruined. It's like, you know what? I missed today, but tomorrow I want to start again. So that's what I was saying, to build sustainable wealth as you're walking to wealth.
Alrighty, so thanks again for hopping on. I'm glad we were able to connect. Looking forward to staying in touch and seeing all the amazing things you have going on. And that
Yeah.
being said, that is the podcast.
Oh, thank you.